All right, Shalom. Call Law Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, Bashim Kakadash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And also peace and salutations, of course, to you sincere brothers who are out pushing the truth across the four corners of the earth. And any Aqua, which is sisters who might be listening and learning as well. Got a lot of tabs up here. I was going through and going over some things because the apostle was going into basically the Moors and Islam and all these different things, and these people are still doing debates to this day. And basically the gist of the video, he was saying they have no prophecy, they have no understanding of things that are about to happen, and that's something that's very important when you try to put your finger on, who has the truth. If you might be watching this video and trying to figure out, who has the answers, basically. Because a lot of people's argument is, well, the Bible was given to us by white men. It was used by white men. Well, it was used by them, but they never had full understanding on it. And that's why, just like the apostle was saying, none of their famous theologists, whether it be Martin Luther, John Calvin, or any of these other people in Esau's church system, none of them received any prophecy. None of them received any further understanding on the scriptures because the Lord wasn't dealing with them. And just like he brought out, it wasn't until Abba Vivens came out and the Holy Spirit was with him, and he started to create the gospel, the foundations for the gospel and the beliefs that we have today, that the Spirit was even dealing with men past a certain point when the church basically passed the period where there was a falling away, because the scriptures talk about there's going to be a falling away first. So we had to fall away, we had to go into captivity, we had to go through all the curses, and then we came back. And if you look at the people who are in Israel today, they never had really a falling away like we had. They were, of course, they were dispersed in different pockets of Eastern Europe and the Caucasus Mountains, and some of them up in what's it called? Hungary and some of those different places going towards the east and towards where the Mongols were, but they never had a falling away where they went into slavery, and that's where they try to use the whole World War II thing to justify them suffering, and basically they had a hand in whitewashing us through history so they could pretend to be us. But history does not line up with who they are. But I was doing a little bit of research on the subject of the Moors. I just wanted to bring out a little bit of history, nothing too complicated, nothing too long. This is an article I was reading on. It's like it. And basically, this is an article on this is an old article too, because basically here in America, just like they whitewashed our history over in Europe, the scriptures say what? He covered the faces of the judges thereof. Well, a lot of these Edomites here, they knew our history as well. This is Glenn Beck. He said Thomas Jefferson created the Marines for the Islamic pirates that were happening, which that's facts. Basically, he's saying that Thomas Jefferson created the Marines for the Islamic pirates that were happening, and then maybe he goes into a little bit of the history, because the Marines were founded in 1775. And just to jump into that, because this is Esau, one of Esau's favorite songs. Matter of fact, I think this is the first. Let me see. Oh yeah, yep. It's the oldest official song in the United States Armed Forces. Yep, the Marines hymn. Basically, it goes, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, which those are two of the first battles. This is the first war that the Marines and the Marines fought in. Is the first war in the shores of Tripoli that the U.S. fought with outside of the shores of the U.S. because this is after the Revolutionary War, so-called United States versus Great Britain. In Tripoli, we know that's a city in North Africa. That's up in North Africa, and I'm gonna jump to that next. Yep, because Tripoli was part of the Ottoman Empire, which this is basically when Ishmael was ruling. Ishmael had his rule. I believe it's about 1200 AD all the way up to this point. This was kind of the wane of their empire, and Esau had been in power for, Esau basically had been in power since the Renaissance, since they came back. But this is where Esau really started to reach the height of his empire when America was founded, and Ishmael started to wane. The Ottoman Empire, and basically in these parts of northern Africa, like I say, Ottoman Tripolitania. These parts of northern Africa, these were referred to as the Barbary states, because here you had people who called some people might say barbarians, but that goes back to the Barbary states, the Berber Moors. That was all the same thing for these people in northern Africa. And we know that Simon the Zealot actually went here. Now, I'm not gonna click on it, but it's not in the scriptures, but it's in history that Simon the Zealot actually preached and went to North Africa. Simon was sent to preach the faith of the Most High to the Berbers outside North Africa. Right? He went into Libya. He went into North Africa, and it was said that he was crucified in, I think it was Ethiopia. I'm not quite sure on that one, but right, he went to Carthage too, because you had a lot of those places were mainly Israelites. Excuse me. He went to go preach to Israelites, but here's where it takes apart. Jumping back to that Marine Corps hymn, here's where it takes apart what they were talking about. What is that? Oh yeah. Some lyrics were popular phrases before the song was written. The line "to the shores of Tripoli" refers to the first Barbary Wars, and specifically the Battle of Dern in 1805. So this is the 1800s. Slaves had been already brought over, right? Columbus in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So Esau's slave trade had been going since, the damn early 1500s, all the way up to this point. You had Negro, Latino, Native American slaves. Really Negro and Latino, but in some cases Native Americans were slaves, and they were thrown in there with Judah, Benjamin, and Levi as well. It said, well, after Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon and his Marines hoisted the American flag over the Old World for the first time, right? Because the Old World, that's what the scriptures is dealing with, really. It's dealing with that Mediterranean region, dealing with Africa, the Middle East, all of that stuff. That's considered the Old World. And then you have the New World, which is over in America, hence the name, the New World Order, North, Central, and South America, and the Caribbean. Right. The phrase was added to the flag of the United States Marine Corps. So basically, this is old history that they celebrated taking us down. And then, of course, there's a different subject for another video, the halls of Montezuma. Montezuma is talking about, that's in Mexico. So that's where they battle Issachar in their in their turf. Back there down there during the Mexican-American War, which a lot of Issacharites, I don't know if they even know the history that their country went to war with America, and then America was advocating with Spain, and they were sending people down there to rule over those Issacharites. But that's a subject for another video. Back to this one, because this is concerning the first Barbary War, which these people fighting. They were under the Ottoman Empire, right? Like I said, it's the islet of Tripolitania, which is under where is it at? It's under the Ottoman Empire, which this is the crescent moon, and yeah, that's what I want. And basically, it was Islam, and these people up here, we know this is where the Moors were. All these places were where the Moors were, and these people, these Israelites who had embraced Islam, and they weren't necessarily under in this West Africa part where they could get captured and taken to America. So a lot of them stayed up here, and like I said, they were under Islam, and they were under the protection of Islam. They were part of the empire. The Barbary states, though, they were seen as like their own. They were under the Ottoman Empire, but they were seen as like their own little region. And that's why when America came in there, and this is where they beat them, the Battle of Durin, part of the first Barbary Wars. When America came in there and beat them, the Ottoman Empire did not send in any. They didn't send any reinforcements, basically, to the Barbary states, the Barbary coast, in order for them to defeat, the Americans and the European powers that were battling against them. And because basically what was happening was America was having shipments come out. Let me see if I can find that too. That's a lock. I should have had it pulled up. Okay, yep. Barbary Wars. So there was a series of conflicts that culminated in 2 wars fought over at different times over the same reasons. And just real quick, I'm using Wikipedia, but sometimes you have to pick through the bones dealing with Wikipedia. Wikipedia sometimes goes off. Just like with this is the Barbary Wars. This is Israelites and Ishmael versus Esau. Really, primarily Israelites. These different places are full of Israelites, and it's interesting, they never show the faces of any of these so-called people from the Barbary coast. And so you got to pick through the bones even when you're dealing with Wikipedia. But it's basically, it's going to tell you that they were fighting against them in North Africa, the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They had been at war with them because the Barbary pirates demand for tribute from American merchant vessels in the Mediterranean Sea. If ships of a given country failed to pay, pirates would attack the ship and take their goods. So basically, these were black pirates who were attacking Americans, and meanwhile, their brothers over in the United States were fucking enslaved. So it's crazy. And then, of course, eventually they're defeated. And the point being that, that this only worked because, number one, they were allied with Ottoman Empire, they embraced Islam, but then it failed because Yahweh Bashim Shah was not with them. That's why the whole Moorish thing, there is some history to people being Moors, but the Moors were defeated. The Moors were done away with. The Moors, Islam got weak. Esau, was given his throne. He was given his power seat. Said what? The earth is given to the hand of the wicked. Now these empires were both wicked because they weren't following the law, statutes, commandments of the Bible. But ultimately, the one who was more wicked, Esau, defeated them. And it's interesting because, damn, I wish I had that pulled up. Basically, these people, these Berbers, they were putting a lot of Christians in slavery, and they had to return the Christians. I don't have it pulled up, but they had to return the Christians to the Americans, and basically what Esau did when they took down this empire, they had to go before Esau. They had to make allegiances with Esau, and Esau did away with all slavery in their empire. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, slavery was part of the Ottoman society with most slaves employed. They were domestic servants, though. It wasn't like here. Slaves under Islamic law, were not regarded as movable property, but maintained basic, though limited rights. They gave them a decree of protection. Female slaves were still sold in empire as late as 1908. Yeah, and after that too. And basically, that's the gist of it. Not to make it too long or too much. Basically, they had to go before Esau. They had to make treaties. The Treaty of Tripoli. They had to make treaties before Esau, and they had to get rid of all enslavement in the empire. And this is it's interesting. This is a huge part of history. America actually had slaves, so-called Negro slaves, and at the same time they were fighting the same people in another place across the earth. And this just goes to show you, and the government knew all of this. This just goes to show you, right? This is Glenn Beck, talking shit. This goes to show you that these Edomites, they know our history. They know where we come from. They know where we are. They know where we've been. And in any of these pictures, they make sure that they try to leave out the history. That's why, this is my little icon. This is a history from the Barbary Wars. These are who? Israelites. They got the little fez on or whatever for Islam and all that shit, but they're still Israelites. And it's only limited pictures where you actually gonna see that they're dark-skinned people, which that's interesting too. Yep, there you go. So, these low-level Edomites, they'll talk about, we were never slaves. We were always slaves, never in a position of power. But they built their empire off of, once again, fighting against us, going against us, and ultimately using us. Look at that, another Israelite. Yep, 1795. Ultimately using us. But that might be Ishmael. It's hard to tell, because he's a dark skin. But you can clearly see that's Jake. That's clearly Jake. And a lot of these are probably Jake too. It's probably, and that's what it was, the Ottoman Empire. Ishmael was ruling. You see that crescent moon at the top, the crescent moons, that's for Islam. And then you had Jake, fall in line under that protection. But, when it was time to preserve their empire, like I said, they cut off the Barbary states, which is those states in North Africa, and the empire still declined, but at least they had cut those states off, and eventually, those states, to this day, they were controlled. The French went in and invaded them, and to this day, if you go into these North African states, France and I'll just say Arabs, the Ishmaelites, they still run these places, even though these are considered African countries. Let's see, there's one more picture. One more. Yeah, this is clear. This looks like Jake too. Let me see. Oh, there you go. Berber Moors. Yep, and these are the people who Esau was fighting against. That's clearly Jake. So, yep, just want to bring that out, showcase some history, just a quick lesson on that, because you still have Jake into that, just like they showed on Robin Hood. He was they showed the white, was it Kevin Costner, was Robin Hood. Then they had, they had Jake as, the Moor. Yep, they had Jake as the Moor. I forget his name. You can put in the comments for me. So, just real quick, another one, Acts 5:38 said, "Now I say unto you, refrain from these men and let them alone, for if this counsel or this work be of men, it will come to naught." And that's what happened. That's what happened in North Africa. It came to naught. Those people, they were spared from captivity, but eventually they came to naught. It didn't last, it didn't survive, but any parts of those empire that have resurfaced, because it's completely ridiculous for our people to want to try to recapture that. They want that rulership, and they want that conquest. They want to gain that power back, but at the same time, the thing that brought you into power in the first place was being an Israelite, because a lot of times in those states, in those North African states, you had a lot of Jews there. That's who the Moors were. They were Jews. You had mainly Jacob there, and they just did what they had to survive. So they embraced Islam, and they embraced the ways of the enemy, and eventually it came to naught. But our faith, if you look at our faith in contrast, our faith has continued and continued. The book has, the Bible has continued through publication. Esau could always sense the power of it, and Yahweh Bashim Yahushua preserved it for us, just like the scriptures talk about with Esau. The wicked is preserved until the day of his judgment, So all these things have been preserved. The prophecies have been preserved. Everything has been preserved until now, and now we're receiving it. Whereas the Moors, there's nothing preserved for them. Everything that they did, you look up more ancient history, you're not going to see any major corporations owned by the Moors, major electric corporations, or major ideas invented by the Moors. The new day Moors of 2019, you're not going to see that. Everything that they're doing is outdated and it's ancient, and they have no prophecy, they have no reach into the future. Their empire was done away with. With that being said, call Allah Yabashim Yabushai. I just wanted to bring that out. Hope it was edifying. Shalom.